as you progress into, what is it, the 60s and 70s, where fat, like saturated fat and red meat, and there's like the demonization of all of this stuff. Red meat gives you cancer, eggs are going to kill you, saturated fat is horrible, right? Like why did that come about? Like how did that come about? And then when did that kind of resurgence come into play of like, no, red meat's actually the most nutrient dense food on the planet, and this is what we should be predominantly eating in terms of our diet?
Yeah, really, I think some of the origins really have to do with religion. I mean, this is what we see if we look back into, what our diet was like, in the United States and other parts. It was very much animal based in many ways. We're eating a lot of meat. You're eating what was available to at the time. I mean, if you lived in, Minnesota in 1850, man, you ain't got a lot of stuff to choose from, right? There's not a grocery store. They can't ship in bananas from, but Mexico or whatever. So you were kind of limited, and we clearly ate a lot of animal products and butter, and butter was the main fat, or animal fat, tallow and lard and those types of things. And so that had been the diet for, really millennia in human terms. And I mean, obviously you would eat whatever plant stuff that you could easily acquire that was seasonal. But then there was a gal named Ellen G. White who was I guess the sort of the one of the genesis of something called the Seventh Day Adventist Church, and she started having these weird. She like dropped on her head and started having these epileptic sort of weird visions, and she started claiming that God was speaking to her and telling her that there was one particular passage in the Bible that talks about having fruits and seeds and herbs. I can't remember the exact biblical passage, but so she focused on that and concluded that man was meant to be basically vegetarian, and that was sort of her doctrine, and that was picked up later by guys like the Kellogg's brothers, John Harvey Kellogg, who was sort of a disciple of hers and an early member of the Seventh Day Adventist Church up in Battle Creek, Michigan, and he developed Kellogg cereal as an attempt to calm our lust, and prevent people from masturbating and thinking about sex and all that stuff. And he was actually mutilating people's genitals as well. He was a really weird sicko guy. But that but then in 1917, members of this same religion, the Seventh Day Adventists, went on to found the American Dietetics Association in hopes of sort of convincing people that vegetarianism was the way. So since the beginning of time, the beginning of modern scientific history and nutrition science, which in the United States was largely what's been exported around the world, started out with this sort of religious zeal, this anti-meat vegetarianism. And so that's where it started. And then, of course, you've had these people that have, I mean, they've occupied some of the highest, positions in nutrition since its beginning. So you have that inherent bias within there. And then, through the 1950s, Dwight Eisenhower has a heart attack and heart disease is on the rise. And so they're looking for a reason. Oh, we got to find a reason. Everybody's freaking out. A lot of people are having heart attacks. And so, Ansel Keys comes along and says, hey, it's dietary, saturated fat and cholesterol is causing all this. And clearly it's related. And we've got this study that shows that countries that eat more saturated fat have more heart disease. And that's it. Aha. And we've discovered it. And that wasn't really settled science. There were a lot of people had questions about that. John Yudkin out of the UK was saying, wait a minute, no, I think it's more like it's processed sugar and things like that. And he said, no, I'm right, you're wrong. The sugar industry paid off Harvard to publish data that said that fat is bad and sugar is fine. And, and then all of a sudden, as we get more into this industrial age of food, we got all this processed food, which is enormously profitable. They know that if and we're seeing that even greater today, that if we can make this really like basic agricultural waste products, I mean, that's what cereal more or less was. It was like this stuff we're going to throw away. Let's throw some vitamins and put some sugar on it and sell it to these unwitting knuckleheads and they'll eat it for breakfast. And so we've had that. And so right now, I mean, it's really been like this effort to get us to eat more and more processed food because it's so much more profitable. Right. And right now, in terms today, like, your generation, I mean, you're eating 70% of your calories come from processed food, ultra processed food, which is just poisoning you. I mean, it's killing everybody. But there's still going on with it because it makes profit. It's all about profit. The USDA just came out. I talked about this on Rogan. We're going to design a study that's 91% processed food, and it's quote unquote healthy because they want you to believe that it's healthy. And every time you get meat out of your diet or animal foods out of your diet rather, and we see that the more plant-based you go, the more likely you are to consume ultra processed foods. Studies clearly confirm that. And so I mean, that's really what it is. It's just to, you know, they don't care if you're sick. I mean, if you're sick, well, if you're sick, guess what? Then the pharmaceutical industry makes more money, right? So it's and the companies that own the people that own the processed food companies also own the pharmaceutical companies. You're talking about BlackRock, you're talking about Vanguard, you're talking about Capital Assets Group and Stateside or State Street, whatever. They own so much of this stuff, and they own all the other companies. So they're just trying to drive their own profits for the shareholders. That's really what's going on. And meat is kind of inconvenient because when you eat a lot of meat, you're like I eat these steaks. I got no desire to eat, cookies and processed garbage. I'm like, good. I'm like, fine. And they know that, and they don't want that. So if they can get meat off the menu, everybody's going to be eating all processed food. And they've got doctors out there that are pushing processed food. Oh yeah, processed food's great. You know, it's kind of it's almost it's nefarious and pretty much kind of evil in my view.